All right, Hokie Nation. Week one of the college basketball season is officially over. We are recording this on Monday, so exactly 1 week following the Hokies season opener against Delaware State. It was an awesome week for both men and women programs at Virginia Tech. Both teams have been off to a fantastic offensive start, and I look forward to watching the women play again tonight. But Mike, how are we doing after week one of college basketball?
The Hokies are dirty.
They are. Both programs are pretty nasty, and both programs can score from a variety of different people, and we'll get into that as we go through. But we figured we would kick this off by kind of hitting all three games at a high level. The Hokies, I believe, are 2-1 against the spread, and all three spreads have been like 20-plus points. So these games haven't exactly been, ACC tournament games, but I think we've learned a little bit, and we will continue to learn more this week. But let's start with Delaware State. A 95-57 win over Delaware State, a team that I believe had won 2 games the season prior. Weren't really expecting much going into that game. But I thought Delaware State was actually much better than advertised. They had a complete roster turnover, as most schools are doing these days via the portal. I think they brought in something like 7 guys. So it's a completely new team for them in their first game. But Virginia Tech came out and handled business largely in part due to Grant Basile with 30 points on 6 threes. So Grant was as advertised on the offensive end against Delaware State, and it was really, really fun to watch him shoot it on last Monday night.
Yeah, how's that for a debut? Huh? Is my camera doing weird stuff? Am I good? Am I good?
It was flaky for a second, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Cool. Just talk about Basile again.
Yeah. No. I mean, Grant Basile was nasty, as advertised, like you mentioned. And how about that for a debut? Huh? I mean, 12-16 from the field. He had 30 points. He had 10 rebounds. I mean, that's without Justin Mutz. Like, you need that offensive and defensive firepower in there. Now, the thing about the defensive firepower is that Basile didn't really provide it on that end of the floor. And Mike Young addressed that in the post game. He said, "Look, I don't want to take anything away from Basile, but he's got to guard better." Right. And I thought that's where Lynn Kidd stepped up, and I thought played a pretty good defensive game in Justin Mutz's absence. The thing about Virginia Tech in this game was Basile couldn't miss, Pedulla couldn't really miss, Maddox couldn't really miss, and that's a good recipe for the Hokies, right? When you have 3 or 4 offensive players on a given night who are going to make 60+% of their shots, this is going to be a really, really tough team to beat, even on an off night defensively. So that's kind of my biggest takeaway from the first 3 games, but especially in this game in particular against Delaware State, and then the third game, which we'll get into in a few minutes, against William & Mary. When the Hokies shoot a certain way, there aren't many teams in the ACC that will be able to keep up with them. And I get the defensive issues. There were some defensive issues in the first half of this game. I thought they guarded a bit better in the second half, with the way they were able to pull away. But like you mentioned, like Delaware State also, I don't think was quite as bad as we thought they were, going into this game. So I think that had a little bit to do with it too.
Yeah, it's easy to say that when you win by 38 or whatever it was, right. But they were much better than I thought they were going to be heading into the game. They were one of the worst teams in all of college basketball the year before. So yeah, Basile and Pedulla with the pick and pop, and Basile just in the offensive rotations in general adds a bit of a different element that I think Keve Aluma could have added at times in his Virginia Tech career, the ability to knock down a shot from deep. But I think we've seen, through all 3 games at this point, that Basile's just a touch better from beyond the arc than Aluma was. He doesn't provide anywhere near as much, maybe defensively or with his back to the basket, but his ability to stretch the floor is significant, and we'll see that all year long. Sean Pedulla,
Basile's a better fit for this offense. I don't want to take anything away from Aluma, but like, he's a better fit.
Yeah, so I talked about this in the Twitter space after the Delaware State game, where I think, now that we've seen 3 games, maybe I'll walk it back a little bit, but at the very least, it's worth mentioning that while Keve Aluma is probably a better all-around player than Grant Basile might be a better fit for this Virginia Tech team, because we don't need a back-to-the-basket scorer as much as we did last year with some offensive issues, because there are no offensive issues this year.
No.
His ability to spread the floor has been significant for guys like Sean Pedulla and his ability to get to the rack. Hunter Couture, we've seen a little bit more of that this year. Darius Maddox, it just opens things up in a way that having a back-to-the-basket traditional center didn't really allow for.
Right.
But we need. I mean, Mike Young talked about it, and it continues to be talked about through all 3 games. Basili's got to play better defense because
Yep.
we haven't played any. He hasn't played any ACC centers yet, and that's coming here shortly. But so far through 3 games, the offensive ability and what he brings on that end really opens the floor up for the rest of the guys.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I didn't mean to cut you off. You were going to get into a thought about Sean Pedulla there.
It's going to be a common theme through all 3 of these games. Sean Pedulla is the real deal. I mean, he has grown physically and in basketball sense with his basketball IQ tremendously over the offseason. You can tell he's put on a bunch of muscle. He was already a really good shooter, but his ability to control the game has been something that I didn't anticipate him taking that big of a jump that quickly. He had 18 and 8 against Delaware State. A lot of those were just kickbacks to Grant Basile, but he's been playing really, really good offensive basketball and held his own on the defensive end as well. So through 3 games, I think everybody would say Sean Pedulla's team MVP so far, but I think he's poised for a really, really good year all year long as the primary ball handler in this offense. And the team shot 14 or made 14 threes on 50% shooting. That's going to get it done every single time.
Yeah. They're not losing many games shooting that way.
No, you won't. And, there's not much else to get from a Delaware State game, but Grant Basile looked awesome in the offense. Sean Pedulla looked really good running the offense. And as a result, the Hokies were able to make 14 threes. So then we get to Lehigh, where we get Justin Mutz back, which is awesome. And Mike Young was very fired up. I know he said after Delaware State he never wants to coach a game without Justin Mutz again because of all the things that Mutz just cleans up for everybody else, especially the defensive end. So what does Justin Mutz do in his first game of the season? 16, 11, and 5. Plays a fantastic Justin Mutz-esque game. And the Hokies are able to win that one relatively easily. Lehigh was probably a step up athletically from where Delaware State was.
Yes.
But overall, a solid game for Virginia Tech. Didn't shoot it anywhere near as well as they did in the first game or the third game, but we're still able to win handily with a 15-5 assist-to-turnover ratio. You'll take that every single time.
This game was important for me to see in the early part of the year because it showed that Tech's got an ability, again, against a quality of opponent in Lehigh that's a step up from Delaware State, like you mentioned, athletically, but nowhere near what they're going to see in ACC play. Tech showed a different ability to win the game, right? Like they won in a different way than they did in the opener against Delaware State or even against William and Mary, right? Where they have an off night shooting at 3. They shoot less than 30% from deep, but they still shoot almost 53% from the floor. Like you mentioned, 15-5 assist to turnover ratio. They played their best defensive game of the year, I thought, against Lehigh so far through 3 games. It's early, of course, but that was their best defensive game so far. I thought they really locked it down, gave us some hope going into the William and Mary game that maybe all that Tech needed to kind of get right defensively was to get Justin Mutz back in the lineup. Of course, we'll talk about the William and Mary game here in a second, but you see, I think what you can take away from this Lehigh game is that Tech has an ability, at least against an opponent that's lesser, right? They're not going to play down to an opponent just because they're not shooting well from 3, right? And I think the biggest gripe, if you were to have one with the Mike Young offense, is that if the shooters go cold from deep, Mike Young coach teams have a tendency to be had on a given night, right? Tech didn't shoot the ball well from 3 at all in this game, and they won by almost 30. That's a really good sign. A really, really good sign. I get the quality of opponent, but if Tech keeps that up in conference play where they have an off night shooting, but they find other ways to score, I think that's going to be a really positive sign moving forward. And it just shows that this year, I think the Hokies have a different level of offensive versatility than they've had in the first, in the first 3 years of the Mike Young era. It's just a different level of offensive versatility, the depth, everything else. So I think that's really important to know coming out of this game.
Yeah, guys like Pedulla and Maddox have the ability to get into the paint and score. Maddox, more from a mid-range game, but Pedulla's been going to the basket with great success. So it's a much more versatile offensive attack than we've seen before from Mike Young coach teams. So they're able to take care of William and Mary or Lehigh relatively easily, and then they played William and Mary, where Hokies win 94-77. You put up a ton of points. Everybody's scoring. It was one of those nights. I was actually surprised listening to the post-game press conference that Mike Young was okay with a defensive performance. I figured he'd be upset with giving up 77 to a William and Mary team that, is an inferior opponent. But I guess he looked at it from a, pace of play, style of play, game. It was going to be a high-scoring one. I was surprised he was okay with the defensive performance, however.
I mean, Anders Nelson was really, really good for William and Mary. 32 minutes. He had 25 points, 6 assists, shot the lights out. He was 10 of 15 from the floor, 4 of 7 from 3. He was really, really good. I mean, Tech didn't have an answer for him. With all that said, William & Mary was never in this game because Tech started this game on a 14-0 run. And Tech wins this game by 17. If the Hokies didn't have that 14-0 run at the beginning, we're talking about this being a much tighter game than I think we would have liked. But this game was never really competitive. Like, Tech kept William & Mary at arm's length because of how they started this game, which is good. I mean, this is a William & Mary team that shot really well in this basketball game. And Mike Young might not have been disappointed with defensive effort. I kind of was watching it. Now, Mike Young's the coach. He knows a lot more about basketball than we do sitting here, a lot more about his team, right? But I was surprised too that his takeaway wasn't more of like, we got to guard better, like it was in the first 2 games of the year, or at least in the first game of the year. Second game of the year against Lehigh, he was like, we definitely guarded better than we did against Delaware State.
Yeah.
This game, I was expecting him to say, well, back to Delaware State issues. And that wasn't really his approach at all in the post game. So I had the same reaction you did, Ed, because I thought he would be really livid at the fact that William & Mary hit 11 threes.
Yeah, I mean, William & Mary shot 50% from the floor and from 3. Virginia Tech shot 50% from 3 and 55% for the game.
16 of them. Hokies made.
Yeah, made 16 threes on a 19-7 assist to turnover. So again, with a really good assist to turnover ratio. And I'm looking at the stat sheet. We had 1, 2, 3, 4 guys in double figures, and it looks like maybe 10 total people score.
Yeah.
So it was coming from a lot of different places. Mike Young was able to play a lot of people. John Camden played 9 minutes. Poteet and Kidd played 13 and 17. MJ Collins played 16. So he was able to get a lot of guys in, and it was nice to see Hunter Couture find his stride. He had been relatively quiet through the first 2 games, then poured in 22 against William & Mary. So
yeah, huge game.
Pedulla and Couture with 22 each. Vasily with 13. Maddox with 14. Justin Mutz with 2, but doing everything else. Overall, it was kind of, like you said, it was never really close. So it's hard to take away much from a game that was kind of over from the jump.
Right.
But the offensive performance was phenomenal. And, Mike Young being able to play some of these guys early and often, especially in these first 3 games before they head to Charleston, I think was something that would be beneficial in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there.
So that's kind of it. 3 kind of snoozers where we didn't really get to learn much. But we will do a segment now called What We Think We Know. So there's a few things that I think I learned this week, and I'm looking forward to the Charleston Classic to kind of confirm some of those, some of these suspicions. But I'm going to start out with my first one. Sean Pedulla is going to lead the way all year. I think he's the primary ball handler. That's clear, but I think he's the primary initiator on offense. I think he will maybe finish the year as the leading scorer on this team. He's playing a lot of minutes, which is concerning. But overall, I think Sean Pedulla is poised for a breakout campaign on a national scale and, could find himself in the all ACC teams when it's all said and done. I think he's going to have a really good year. I'm super pleased with what I've seen from him through week 1.
Offensively, he's been better than I think we could have hoped. We all knew his game was there offensively. Like, there were certainly games last year where he played more minutes and we were like, all right, this kid is, if he gets it going, he's going to be hard to guard.
Yeah.
Where I've been more impressed with Pedulla is what he's been able to do defensively, because last year, a lot of times the Hokies backcourt as a whole tended to be more of a defensive liability.
Mm-hmm.
This year, Maddox guarded okay last year, but Pedulla, when he came off the bench, did not guard very well at all, right? One of our gripes going into the year last year with Maddox, as he was like starting to get a little bit more playing time, is like, Mike Young's only going to play him if he starts guarding. Then he started guarding, right? Pedulla almost had to play because Tech had no other guy to bring the ball up the court other than Storm Murphy. So Pedulla had to play almost out of necessity. For Maddox, it was like we knew why he wasn't getting as much run as he wanted. Then he started to guard, and we were like, okay, we could see that. With Pedulla, it was still a problem, right? So coming into this year, the one thing I was hoping for is that Pedulla would take a step up defensively. It's pretty clear he's done that. Like, he's no longer getting bullied on the butt. We'll see ACC play, bigger guards, more athletic guys, all that stuff. But like, Pedulla's put on some muscle for sure. He's a bigger player than he was last year. But he's looking the part defensively now too, where like there's still some sore spots here and there where you're like, oh man, he's got to not go under that screen, that sort of thing. But like, he's defending at a much, much higher level than through 3 games anyway than he was a year ago.
Yeah, he's getting near the Justin Mutz, you can't take him off the floor category. He's
Yes.
playing phenomenal ball on
Yes.
both ends, and I thought he did a good job leading in the Delaware State game when Mutz was out. I just across the board, he's playing really good basketball. There was a
Yeah.
sequence in the Delaware State game. I remember he fronted the post man, stole the ball in the entry pass, kicked it up ahead, went down at the other end and hit a three. And I was like, okay, this dude's arrived. Like he's that guy now. And I look forward to him the rest of the season. I just think he's poised for a breakout campaign. I know John Rothstein's a huge fan. I've seen him tweeting about Pedulla on Twitter. But through 3 games, he's averaging 20 and 5 on 52% from the floor. So awesome week for Sean Pedulla. Stock is rising for him for sure.
Definitely.
The next thing that I think I learned this week was that this offense is insane. This offense has the ability for any of the 5 starters and even some guys off the bench to beat you any given night. Couture could get you for 20. Mutz could put up a triple-double. We saw what Basili could do against Delaware State, and then we've talked about Pedulla at length. Oh, and we haven't even talked about Darius Maddox, who's quietly averaging double figures as well.
Yeah,
his game's just so freaking smooth, man. Darius Maddox is just smooth. So this offense is really good. Now, I'll caveat that with the defensive concerns, but I think this offense is phenomenal and deserves a lot of national attention that I think it will get here shortly.
With the offense as good as it's been, if Tech can continue shooting this way, and I know it's hard to ask for a team to shoot 50 and 60% from 3 all year, but if this team continues to shoot the way that it is and continues to be as good of an offensive team as we think it is, the defense can kind of take its lumps and just come along as the season goes along.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, have the defense take its lumps early in non-conference play and just outscore people, and then start to tighten things up as you get into January and February. That's all that we can ask for. And I don't think they're as far off defensively, Ed, as maybe the naked eye would tell you. Like,
Yeah.
I think number one, getting the core rotation down is really important. So like getting Justin Mutz back into the lineup against Lehigh was huge, and having him get minutes under his belt and play more is huge. I think getting Rodney Rice back after the Charleston Classic, it sounds like getting him back on the floor will be helpful because number one, we'll get to see what he's got. And number two, take a little bit of pressure off Pedulla, because you mentioned the minutes thing a couple minutes ago. I think that's really, really important, Ed. Like right now, Tech's got nobody to really take the pressure off of Pedulla from a bring the ball up the court standpoint. I mean, Hunter Couture is playing that role a little bit right now out of necessity, but he did that a few years ago, like when Beatty was out of the lineup, and we were like, do we really want, and Couture is a much better player now, but like, do we really want that to be the case 100% of the time? He's much better off the ball. So I think the defensive concerns are there, but I think if the offense continues playing the way that it is, I think Tech's going to be in a really, really good spot.
Yeah, Mike Young talked about the someone asked him a question, Sean Pedulla played 36 minutes against William & Mary. That's not something you're going to want to see throughout the rest of the year as your, sophomore point guard playing 36 minutes. And he mentioned specifically what you just talked about, how, Hunter can do it, but he's so dangerous off the ball and commands so much attention off the ball. You don't want him to have to bring the ball up the floor. It's not really Darius Maddox's game, and all of a sudden you're out of guards. So, Rodney Rice coming back is going to be huge to help alleviate some of that pressure on Pedulla. But this offense is super special, and I look forward to watching it develop the rest of the year. But I think what we've kind of seen through all of Mike Young's teams so far at Virginia Tech is that the offense will come out of the gate in November firing, and the defense will come along. I think that's just going to be the case with these teams. Why that is, I'm not really sure. College basketball defense is much different than high school basketball. So last year it was tough for, Pedulla and Maddox to come along. And we've seen MJ Collins jump right into the fire and be able to handle it well as a freshman. But I just think in general, these Mike Young coach teams the defense is going to be a work in progress. We saw it last year with a veteran-laden team, and this year there's a lot of inexperienced guys. So it's kind of to be expected, and it hasn't been a huge problem so far, but who knows once the competition level ticks up a little bit. But the offense, you're right, is so good that I think there's a little bit of a buffer there. With, especially Basili, right? Basili defensively is a concern, but then you have Lynn Kidd right behind him who kind of brings that physical presence and allows you to do some more things defensively. So his development through the first week is something I think we should talk about a little bit, because he's played some really good ball, and Mike Young has bragged on him in the post-game press conferences where he's not sure he's ever seen anybody work this hard in an offseason. He said Lynn Kidd's been getting after it and had a conversation with himself in the offseason and really decided, I'm going to become a good basketball player because he's got all the physical tools. We all knew that coming out of high school. But now he's put on weight. You can see he's really, really strong and has found a way to be impactful on both ends of the floor through 3 games.
Yeah, I was going to add, like, you had those 2 pieces on the offense and Pedulla for the what we think we know. I just want to add, like, one thing to that, and that's I think Lynn Kidd has the opportunity to be the most impactful player off the bench for Virginia Tech, which is saying something. And Rodney Rice is going to come back and he's going to have his say, right? And I think he's going to be really good. But I think the importance of Lynn Kidd on the defensive end of the floor as the year goes on is just going to become more and more important. Especially with the way we've seen Basili struggle on that end of the floor. And I don't want to kill Basili because he's been so good on offense through 3 games. I don't want to kill him there. And he's going to be a really important player. But like, Kidd is a defensive specialist, right? Like, he's going to come in and be really, really impactful on that end of the floor all year. He's already shown that, right? In the playing time he's gotten. And it's clear that he's going to be a really important piece of the rotation. Coming into the year, I thought I know you were really high on Kidd, Ed, so I want to give you your credit there. But I personally thought that Camden might be getting more minutes as like that guy slotted in as like the 4. You know what I mean? He'd be getting more minutes off the bench. I think it's pretty clear through the first 3 games that Mike Young wants to give Lynn Kidd the opportunity to really be that guy to step in and be that bench 4-5 player, right? And I know that him and Camden are a little bit different, right? I know Elijah Petit is maybe more in the mold of Lynn Kidd, where he's going to come off the bench and kind of be that kind of similar lanky guy. But it's pretty clear that Kidd's going to have a really, really important role on this team. And I think he has the opportunity to be Tech's most impactful bench player and most important bench player as the year goes on.
Yeah, I agree. He's been really good through 3 games. He's averaging close to 7 points and 5 rebounds a game on 17 minutes a night. I think 17 minutes a night is probably what you're going to see from Lynn Kidd throughout most of the year. I am surprised he has 0 blocks through 3 games, but that being said, I think those will come with time. He's been really good, and Mike Young talked about, Lynn Kidd's earned everything he's getting right now. So
yeah,
I'm excited to continue to watch him develop, not only this year, but down the line, because, you love hearing coaches talk about guys like that when they're just grinding both in the gym and in the weight room. And it's paid off for him in a big way through the first 3 games. I'm excited to continue to watch his role develop. But I'm going to counter your Lynn Kidd take with my last what I think I know, and that MJ Collins is that dude. MJ Collins fits in perfectly. He's kind of just been a 3-and-D guy, but he's shown a really good ability to get into the paint and knock down floaters or mid-range shots. MJ Collins will far outperform his, what did Mike Young call it? Like 247 ranking or whatever it is. Mike Young's not a fan of recruiting rankings, but MJ Collins will far outperform his. So hats off to the staff for an awesome scout there. He's been awesome through a week. I've been really, really excited about that, freshman guard presence off the bench who, before the injury, we thought it'd be Rodney Rice, and it will be. Rodney Rice is going to play significant minutes when he gets back. But I'm really pleased with what I've seen from MJ Collins through a week.
I have a hard time arguing that point. So, agree.
He fits in, man. He doesn't look like he's sped up. He's in control. He's playing good defense. He's very athletic, which I'm sure helped with the transition, obviously. But that's all. We can analyze MJ Collins more in future weeks. But I'm really excited about him, and I think he's done a very good job.
He's just 1 week. He's another really good system fit, is what it boils down to. He's just another really good Mike Young system player. So
yeah, right now he reminds me kind of a freshman Naheem Aline, but way more athletic.
Yeah.
3-and-D guy, can do a little bit in the mid range, but is a very good athletic player and can guard. So I think he's going to have a significant role as the year progresses, because as of right now, it's Maddox, Pedulla, Couture, nobody off the bench guard wise. So it's a really big deal that we have MJ Collins was able to come into college basketball and get acclimated as quickly as he can. So with that, we're going to move on to what we need to see. And one of those first things for me is a secondary ball handler. And we've talked about Rodney Rice, but the concerns of a guy like Sean Pedulla playing 36 minutes a night against William & Mary in November, that stuff takes a toll. Mm-hmm. And he's desperately going to need to be spelled by somebody as a secondary ball handler. And we know we don't want it to be Hunter Couture, even though he's more than capable. It just takes away a huge element of Couture's game. So getting Rodney Rice back is going to be super important for this team. Now, going into a tournament weekend with the Charleston Classic this week with no Rodney Rice, Sean Pedulla's legs are probably going to be pretty tired at the end of this weekend. But I would love to find a way to alleviate some of that pressure on him, whether it be Couture or Maddox or even MJ Collins, somebody else bringing the ball to the floor to give Sean Pedulla more than 4 minutes rest. But we desperately need a secondary ball handler, which, ironically enough, these Mike Young teams have all been extremely. They've all had good guards, but it always seems to be that we only have one point guard, whether it was Beatty or Murphy or now Pedulla. We never really have a true secondary backup point guard. So I'm really excited for Rodney Rice to get back, not only for his talent, but also just to save Sean Pedulla's legs a little bit.
First of all, I agree with that entire point. I was just thinking, though, as you were talking, maybe we can think about this a different way, too. Like, Hunter Couture bringing the ball up takes an element away from the offense. Like, we've established that. We agree. I also think Tech is in a better spot offensively with their versatility and their depth this year to withstand something like that, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Where if Couture had to bring the ball up, say Pedulla gets hurt or something. We don't want him to, obviously, but say he's out for a period of time and Couture needs to bring the ball up. He's in foul trouble. Better example. He's in foul trouble, right? And I don't need anybody injured. Say he's in foul trouble, right? And Rice is in foul trouble, or Rice has been playing a bunch, and we need Couture to bring the ball up a bit. I think Tech is in a better spot to withstand that this year, in terms of who they can bring off the bench, the guys who have, they're kind of position agnostic, where they can play multiple positions. They can slide to a 2, slide to a 3, slide to a 4. This is the best Mike Young roster in terms of versatility they've had at Tech. So I think if Couture had to bring the ball up, I think he could. But it is a concern for me, though. And I think it's valid. I think it's something that obviously we have to bring up.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that the game that Pedulla played the most, therefore allowed Couture to play his natural position the most, was the best game Couture's had.
Right.
Playing off the ball with Pedulla in the backcourt, it was by far, the William & Mary game was by far Couture's most impactful game on the offensive end.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. Darius Maddox's ability to score, Basili, Mutz, MJ Collins, all these other guys that Mike Young has at his disposal right now definitely allows for, some less than ideal situations in terms of the backup point guard, if you will.
Right.
But let's just get Rodney Rice back. How about that? So we don't have to deal with it.
Let's do that. No injuries either. We're done with those.
The no more foot injuries. The second thing I'm concerned with so far is the defense, and it's come in waves. I think, I've heard Mike Young talk about how, Basili is capable and wants to learn how to play defense at this level. And Mike Young has said, we'll get him there. But we need to get him there quick because, there's some bigger games looming here. And we need more of a presence coming from that 5 spot on the defensive end of the floor. And Basili and Kidd, the combination of the two of them, I think is more than serviceable on the defensive end. But we need to get there sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I mean, Tech's in a spot right now where they have 2.5 defenders in the front court, on a consistent basis, in Kidd, Mutz, and then half of Basili, because I do think Basili can get there, and I think he's shown flashes, right? So I don't want to say he's totally incapable, because I do think there have been flashes through the first 3 games, but it just hasn't been consistent.
Yeah,
he's got to get there. I mean, he's the glaring, and I don't. It's tough because he's the glaring weakness defensively in this lineup, but that's also because it's the most obvious need, right? With Aluma gone, it's the most glaring hole in the starting 5 now is where are you going to find that front court defense? And it's just natural that it's on Basili because Mutz is a really good defender. So Pedulla has started to answer the question in the backcourt, and Maddox is continuing his strong finish of the year defensively. And we know Couture can lock up anybody on the wing. He's a really good defender.
Yeah.
We got to get there with Basili. Offensively, he's going to have to be on the floor because of what he provides on the offensive end. Just be serviceable enough on defense. I'm not asking him to be a all-ACC defensive player. I'm just asking him to just be serviceable enough that when we get into conference play, it's not a total liability. We're playing 4-on-5 on that end.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like he's out of position. It's more of an aggressive thing. He needs to be more aggressive defensively. He seems to be where he should be.
Right.
It's just maybe he's tentative to get in foul trouble or whatever that may be. I'm sure the Wright State, when he would get in foul trouble, that was a bad thing for the Wright State team just because of how good Basili is and was at that level. So and maybe it's just an aggressive thing, a different mindset defensively he needs to get to, because he does seem more than capable. And I thought he took strides in the William and Mary game on that end. So
Yeah.
if they can figure out defensively, watch out for this team because the offense
Yeah.
is going to be clicking every night.
I
And the
agree.
last thing I've got that I need to see is obviously higher competition level. Through
Yeah.
3 games, we haven't really played anybody of significance. That's going to change this week when we head to the Charleston Classic. But I think we're going to learn a lot about this team Thursday through Sunday. Thursday, Friday, Sunday, I believe, is how these games work
Yep.
in the Charleston Classic. So I think we're going to come out of this. And next week, by the time we press record, Mike, we're going to know a lot more about this team and probably answer some of those questions that we have. We obviously won't get the secondary ball handler question answered just because we know for a fact Rodney Rice will not be playing this week, which is unfortunate, but mostly expected. But defensively, I think we're going to learn a lot, and I think we're going to see Virginia Tech play against some better teams because, down in Charleston, they open up Thursday at 2:00 in the afternoon against Old Dominion, which Old Dominion's a decent team. They're 1-1. They beat Maryland Eastern Shore, and then they lost to Drexel. But ODU, at the very least, is going to have maybe some athletes that Virginia Tech hasn't seen so far. They'll probably be the most athletic team we play.
Yep.
Surpassing Lehigh, who's in that spot so far. And then other than that, if they win that game, they play – well, actually, either way, they play either Furman or Penn State on Friday. Hopefully we win and are playing somebody like Penn State. I would love to play a team like Penn State and just see, Power 5 versus Power 5 where we match up. Other teams in that tournament we could potentially run into later on are Colorado State, South Carolina, Davidson, and the College of Charleston. So in terms of overall talent, it's a pretty solid group of teams going down to Charleston for the weekend. And I think as a result of that, we could run into some matchups where we really can come out of it understanding more about this team than we did from the first week.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if they got to face Colorado State, at least David Roddy is not on the team anymore. But the Penn State game is interesting because if Tech does match up with Penn State, the Hokies have historically struggled when getting the non-conference games against the Nittany Lions, and I don't know why, but they always get in a freaking dogfight with Penn State early in the year. I feel like I've seen that 3 or 4 times over the past decade where I'm like, what in the world? Why is Tech's favored by double digits? Why are they struggling this much? Yeah,
2019 team lost to Penn State. Yeah. I was at Elrod's watching that game. I was pissed.
Yeah. And I just feel like that will be a really interesting challenge. So I'm really hoping we see that game. I agree with you on the Old Dominion point. I think they're going to provide Tech with some challenges in terms of the athleticism and the step up. I think that would be the most athletic team that Tech's played when they tip off on Thursday afternoon. So that'll be really interesting to watch and see kind of how Tech reacts to that. But the Hokies are the better basketball team, right? They should get through that game. It's a matter of, okay, if you're facing what I would assume to be Penn State in that second round, if you beat Old Dominion, what does that look like? Tech, again, much better basketball team than Penn State, but they provide some challenges to the Hokies in recent years, even when Tech's had better teams. So there's definitely a step up in competition here, which I'm really excited to see how Tech responds to that, because it's almost, with this entire field, it's an intermediate step up, right? It's not like you're playing the Carolinas of the world. They'll get there in a few weeks, but you are playing, teams that could be fringe tournament teams, which, Tech hasn't faced so far. It's been 3 walkovers.
Yeah, it'll be a slight tick up in competition level, which I'm looking forward to. I mean, guys like Pedulla and Couture, Mutz, and Maddox know what to expect. But I'm interested to see, Basili's played teams of this level before, so he shouldn't be too surprised. But how does MJ Collins acclimate to the higher competition level? And Mike Young talked about MJ Collins in a presser and said, he's been playing well, but he hasn't really been thrown into the fire yet, and the heat's going to get turned up shortly. So I look forward to seeing how MJ Collins adjusts, because he's a guy I think could be really impactful throughout the year.
Yep.
So that is it on the men's side, and I do want to touch on the women's team because they are 2-0. They're getting ready to play in about an hour. We're recording on Monday, the 14th. They play in an hour against South Carolina upstate, but they are really, really fun to watch. I highly encourage all of the men's basketball fans that listen to us to turn on the women whenever they can, because they're really fun. They play an awesome style of basketball. Everyone knows about Liz Kitley and Georgia A. Moore, but Taylor Soule is really, really fun to watch, the Boston College transfer, as well as Ashley Owusu coming over from Maryland. This team is loaded. And they play a really, really fun style of basketball. Highly encourage you to turn them on if you have the free moment. I encourage you to turn on to the Queens of the Castle podcast that Georgia and Liz
Yeah.
host. It's highly entertaining. They do a really good job. It's been really fun to listen to those two. But they're 2-0. Kayla King hit 9 threes in the first game.
I was gonna say they interviewed number one, Queens of the Castle. They interviewed Kayla King. Number two,
Yes.
Kayla King. You didn't even mention her off the top. She's the leading scorer right now. She hit 9 threes in the opener.
Yeah, her and Liz are tied, averaging 20 a game, and then
Yeah.
Georgia's averaging a smooth 11 and 6.5 assists through 2 games. If you like good point guard play, watch Sean Pedulla and Georgia Amore. It might be some of the best point guard play collectively for a university in the country. So highly encourage them. Definitely want to give them a shout out. They're currently ranked 14th in the country, and this kind of the sky's the limit for that team. There's a lot of depth and talent at Kenny Brooks' disposal. So
yeah,
definitely tune them on when you got a free moment.
I don't want to put this out there, but I'm gonna have to. This is a Final Four type team. So seriously, like, jump on the wagon now. This is going to be a really fun year for the women's team. They are. It's time to tune into the for everybody who's just paying attention to men's basketball, the ups and downs. It's time to put the women's team on. They're disgusting. They're really
good.
The
students have done a great job. They turned out pretty well for that opening night game on a Monday at like 5 o'clock. So
they did.
I'm glad to see the students are giving them the support they deserve. Little Australian flair on the roster too, with Georgia Amore and Charlize Dunn, a freshman from Australia as well. So very fun team. Definitely encourage watching them. Really good brand of basketball they're playing right now.
Yep.
And like you said, sky's the limit. 14th seems too low for them right now. We'll see where their ranking ends up in a few weeks, but they're fantastic, and as are the men. So it's been an overall 5-0 week for the Hahn Hurst practice facility in Blacksburg, and look forward to continuing that tonight when the women make it 6-0 for the building.
Yep, 100%.
But that's all I've got. I look forward to the Charleston Classic. I think we're going to learn a lot about the men's team this week, answer some of those questions. And guys like MJ Collins, Lynn Kidd, where are they going to shake out? As you would expect rotations to shrink a little bit, but through 1 week, the offense has been as advertised. It's a really fun team to watch, as you'd expect Mike Young offenses to be. It's been fun. I'm so glad basketball's back to distract from the woes on the football field. But I've got nothing else, Mike. So go ahead and sign us off. If you've got any closing thoughts, let them rip.
The football team's terrible. Just just hold on for dear life the final 2 weeks of the year. Thoughts and prayers to UVA. We're recording Monday night. That's real life happened on Sunday night. So thoughts and prayers to the football program, everybody involved. Terrible.
Yeah, the Charlottesville community as a whole is absolutely brutal waking up to that this morning.
Yep. Yeah, like real life hit fast there. So thoughts and prayers to everybody involved.
Yep. And on that note, we'll go ahead and sign off. So until next week, go Hokies.